9. Place Calcutta, year 1897. For the last 10 days, the disciple had been studying Sayana's commentary on the Rig Veda with Swamiji, who was staying then at the house of the late Babu Balaram Bose at Bagh Bazar. Max Muller's volumes on the Rig Veda had been brought from a wealthy friend's private library. Swamiji was correcting the disciple every now and then and giving them the true pronunciation or construction as necessary. Sometimes, while explaining the arguments of Sayana to establish the eternity of the Vedas, Swamiji was praising very highly the commentator's wonderful ingenuity. Sometimes, again, while arguing out the deeper significance of the doctrine, he was putting forward a difference in view and indulging in an innocent squib at Sayana. While our study had proceeded thus for a while, Swamiji raised the topic about Max Muller and continued thus: "Well, do you know? My impression is that it is Sayana who is born again as Max Muller to revive his own commentary on the Vedas. I have had this notion for long. It became confirmed in my mind, it seems, after I had seen Max Muller. Even here in this country, you don't find a scholar so persevering and so firmly grounded in the Vedas and the Vedanta. Over and above this, what a deep, unfathomable respect for Sri Ramakrishna. Do you know, he believes in his divine incarnation. And what great hospitality towards me when I was his guest. Seeing the old man and his lady, it seemed to me that they were living their home life like another Vashishta and Arundhati. At the time of parting with me, tears came into the eyes of the old man." Disciple: "But sir, if Sayana himself became Max Muller, then why was he born as a Mlecha instead of being born in the sacred land of India?" Swamiji: "The feeling and the distinction that I am an Aryan and the other is a Mlecha come from ignorance. But what are Varnashrama and caste divisions to one who is the commentator of the Vedas, the shining embodiment of knowledge? To him they are wholly meaningless, and he can assume human birth wherever he likes for doing good to mankind. Especially if he did not choose to be born in a land which excelled both in learning and wealth, where would he secure the large expenses for publishing such stupendous volumes? Didn't you hear that the East India Company paid 9 lakhs of rupees in cash to have the Rig Veda published? Even this money was not enough. Hundreds of Vedic Pandits had to be employed in this country on monthly stipends. Has anybody seen in this age, here in this country, such profound yearning for knowledge, such prodigious investment of money for the sake of light and learning? Max Muller himself has written it in his preface, that for 25 years he prepared only the manuscripts. Then the printing took another 20 years. It is not possible for an ordinary man to drudge for 45 years of his life with one publication. Just think of it. Is it an idle fancy of mine to say he is Sayana himself?" After this talk about Max Muller, the leading of the Vedas was resumed. Now Swamiji began variously to support the view of Sayana that creation proceeded out of the Vedas. He said, "Veda means the sum total of eternal truths. The Vedic rishis experienced those truths. They can be experienced only by seers of the supersensuous and not by common men like us. That is why in the Vedas the term rishi means the seer of the truth of the mantras, and not by Brahmin with the holy thread hanging down the neck. The division of society into castes came about later on. Veda is of the nature of Shabda or of idea. It is but the sum total of ideas. Shabda, according to the old Vedic meaning of the term, is the subtle idea, which reveals itself by taking the gross form later on. So, owing to the dissolution of the creation, the subtle seeds of the future creation become involved in the Veda. Accordingly, in the Puranas you find that during the first divine incarnation, the Meenavatara, the Veda, is first made manifest. The Vedas having been first revealed in this incarnation, the other creative manifestations followed. Or in other words, all the created objects began to take concrete shape out of the Shabdas or ideas in the Veda. For in Shabda or idea, all gross objects have their subtle forms. Creation had proceeded in the same way in all previous cycles or kalpas. This you find in the Sandhya mantra of the Vedas. Surya Chandra Masau Dhata Yatha Purvam Akalpayat Prithivin Devam Chantariksha Matho Swaha. The Creator projected the sun, the moon, the earth, the atmosphere, the heaven, and the upper spheres in the same manner and process as in previous cycles. Do you understand? Disciple: But sir, how in the absence of an actual concrete object can the Shabda or idea be applied and for what? And how can the names too be given at all? Swamiji. Yes, that is what on first thought seems to be the difficulty. But just think of this. Supposing this jug breaks into pieces, does the idea of a jug become null and void? No, because the jug is the gross effect, while the idea jug is the subtle state or the Shabda state of the jug. In the same way, the Shabda state of every object is its subtle state, and the things we see, hear, touch, or perceive in any manner are the gross manifestations of entities in the subtle or Shabda state. Just as we may speak of the effect and its cause. Even when the whole creation is annihilated, the Shabda, as the consciousness of the universe or the subtle reality of all concrete things, exists in Brahman as the cause. At the point of creative manifestation, this sum total of causal entities vibrates into activity, as it were, and as being the sonant, material substance of it all, the eternal, primal sound of Om continues to come out of itself. And then from the causal totality comes out first the subtle image or Shabda form of each particular thing, and then its gross manifestation. Now that causal Shabda or word consciousness is Brahman, and it is the Veda. This is the purport of Sayana. Do you now understand? Disciple. No, sir, I can't clearly comprehend it. Swamiji. Well, you understand, I suppose, that even if all the jugs in the universe were to be destroyed, the idea or Shabda jug would still exist. So if the universe be destroyed, I mean if all the things making up the universe be smashed to atoms, why should not the ideas or Shabdas representing all of them in consciousness be still existing? And why cannot a second creation be supposed to come out of them in time? Disciple. But sir, if one cries out jug, jug, that does not cause any jug to be produced. Swamiji. No, nothing is produced if you or I cry out like that. But a jug must be revealed if the idea of it rises in Brahman, which is perfect in its creative determinations. When we see even those established in the practice of religion, sadhakas, bring about by willpower things otherwise impossible to happen, what to speak of Brahman with perfect creativeness of will? At the point of creation, Brahman becomes manifest as Shabda, idea, and then assumes the form of Nada or Om. At the next stage, the particular Shabdas or ideas that variously existed in former cycles, such as Bhu, Bhuva, Sva, cow, man, etc., begin to come out of the Om. As soon as these ideas appear in Brahman endowed with perfect will, the corresponding concrete things also appear, and gradually the diversified universe becomes manifest. Do you now understand how Shabda is the source of creation? Disciple. Yes, I just form some idea of it, but there is no clear comprehension in the mind. Swamiji. Well, clear comprehension, inward realization is no small matter, my son. When the mind proceeds towards self-absorption in Brahman, it passes through all these stages one by one to reach the absolute, nirvikalpa state at last. In the process of entering into samadhi, first the universe appears as one mass of ideas, then the whole thing loses itself in a profound Om. Then even that melts away, even that seems to be between being and non-being. That is the experience of the eternal Nada. And then the mind becomes lost in the reality of Brahman, and then it is done. All is peace. The disciple sat mute, thinking that none could express and explain it in the way Swamiji was doing, unless the whole thing were a matter of one's own experience. Swamiji then resumed the subject. Great men like avatars, in coming back from samadhi to the realm of I and mine, first experience the unmanifest Nada, which by degrees grows distinct and appears as Om, and then from Omkara, the subtle form of the universe as a mass of ideas becomes experienced. And last, the material universe comes into perception. But ordinary sadhakas somehow reach beyond Nada through immense practice, and when once they attain to the direct realization of Brahman, they cannot again come back to the lower plane of material perception. They melt away in Brahman, Kshire Niravat, like water in milk. When all this talk on the theory of creation was going on, the great dramatist, Babu Girish Chandra Ghosh, appeared on the scene. Swamiji gave him his courteous greetings and continued his lessons to the disciple. Shabdas are again divided into two classes, the Vedic Shabdas and those in common human use. I found this position in the Nyaya book called Shabda Shakti Prakashika. There, the arguments no doubt indicate great power of thought, but oh, the terminology confounds the brain. Now, turning to Girish Babu, Swamiji said, "What do you say, GC? Well, you do not care to study all this. You pass your days with your adoration of this and that god, eh?" Girish Babu, "What shall I study, brother? I have neither time nor understanding enough to pry into all that. But this time, with Sri Ramakrishna's grace, I shall pass by with greetings to your Vedas and Vedanta and take one leap to the far beyond. He gets you through all these studies because he wants to get many a thing done by you. But we have no need of them." Saying this, Girish Babu again and again touched the big Rig Veda volumes with his head, uttering, "All victory to Ramakrishna in the form of Veda." Swamiji was now in a sort of deep reverie when Girish Babu suddenly called out to him and said, "Well, hear me please. A good deal of study you have made in the Vedas and Vedanta, but say, did you find anywhere in them any way for us out of all these profound miseries in the country, all these wailings of grief, all this starvation, all these crimes of adultery, and the many horrible sins?" Saying this, he painted over and over again the horrid pictures of society. Swamiji remained perfectly quiet and speechless, while at the thought of the sorrows and miseries of his fellow men, tears began to flow out of his eyes, and seemingly to hide his feelings from us, he rose and left the room. Meanwhile, addressing the disciple, Girish Babu said, "Did you see Bangal? What a great loving heart! I don't honor your Swamiji simply for being a Pandit versed in the Vedas, but I honor him for that great heart of his, which just made him retire weeping at the sorrows of his fellow beings." The disciple and Girish Babu then went on conversing with each other, the latter proving that knowledge and love were ultimately the same. In the meantime, Swamiji returned and asked the disciple, "Well, what was all this talk going on between you?" The disciple said, "Sir, we are talking about the Vedas. And the wonder of it is that our Girish Babu has not studied these books but has grasped the ultimate truths with clean precision." Swamiji, "All truths reveal themselves to him who has got real devotion to the Guru. He has hardly any need of studies. But such devotion and faith are very rare in this world. He who possesses those in the measure of our friend here need not study the Shastras. But he who rushes forward to imitate him will only bring about his own ruin. Always follow his advice, but never attempt to imitate his ways." Disciple, "Yes, sir." Swamiji, "No saying ditto merely. Do grasp clearly the words I say. Don't nod assent like a fool to everything said. Don't put implicit faith, even if I declare something. First clearly grasp and then accept. Sri Ramakrishna always used to insist on my accepting every word of his only after clear comprehension of it. Walk on your path only with what sound principle, clear reasoning, and scripture all declare as true. Thus, by constant reflection, the intellect will become clear, and then only can Brahman be reflected therein. Do you understand?" Disciple, "Yes, sir, I do. But the brain gets puzzled with the different views of different men. This very moment I was being told by Girish Babu, 'What will you do with all this studying?' And then you come and say, 'Reflect on what you hear and read about.' So what exactly am I to do?" Swamiji, "Both what he and I have advised you are true. The only difference is that the advice of both has been given from different standpoints. There is a stage of spiritual life where all reasonings are hushed, mukha swadhanavat, like some delicious taste enjoyed by the dumb. And there is another mode of spiritual life in which one has to realize the truth through the pursuit of scriptural learning, through studying and teaching. You have to proceed through studies and reflection. That is your way to realization. Do you see?" Receiving such a mandate from Swamiji, the disciple in his folly took it to imply Girish Babu's discomfiture, and so turning towards him said, "Do you hear, sir? Swamiji's advice to me plainly is just to study and reflect on the Vedas and Vedanta." Girish Babu, "Well, you go on doing so with Swamiji's blessings. You will, indeed, succeed in that way." Swami Sadananda arrived there at that moment, and seeing him, Swamiji at once said, "Do you know, my heart is sorely troubled by the picture of our country's miseries GC was depicting just now. Well, can you do anything for our country?" Sadananda: "Maharaj, let the mandate once go forth. Your slave is ready." Swamiji: "First, on a pretty small scale, start a relief center where the poor and the distressed may obtain relief and the diseased may be nursed. Helpless people having none to look after them will be relieved and served there, irrespective of creed or color, do you see?" Sadananda: "Just as you command, sir." Swamiji: "There is no greater dharma than this service of living beings. If this dharma can be practiced in the real spirit, then mukti kara phalayate. Liberation comes as a fruit on the very palm of one's hand." Addressing Girish Babu now, Swamiji said, "Do you know, Girish Babu, it occurs to me that even if 1,000 births have to be taken in order to relieve the sorrows of the world, surely I will take them. If by my doing that, even a single soul may have a little bit of his grief relieved, why, I will do it. Well, what avails it all to have only one's own liberation? All men should be taken along with oneself on that way. Can you say why a feeling like this comes up foremost in my mind?" Girish Babu: "Ah, otherwise why should Sri Ramakrishna declare you to be greater than all others in spiritual competence?" Saying this, Girish Babu took leave of us all to go elsewhere on some business.